This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. Here's what's ahead. Kazakhstan detains its former prime minister on suspicion of high treason following days of violent protests. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in the Maldives as the two nations mark 50 years of diplomatic ties. And Ugandans in the grip of a third wave of COVID-19 as cases hit a daily average of 1,300. Once again, welcome to The World Today. Great to have you with us. Let's begin in Kazakhstan, where the country's former prime minister and security chief Karim Mazimov has been detained on suspicion of high treason. The country has been experiencing its worst street unrest since gaining independence from the Soviet Union 3 decades ago. President Kasimov Jomart Tokayev says there will be no talks with terrorists and unrest must stop. He has declared January the 10th as a national day of mourning to remember those killed in the unrest. Demonstrations began last week in response to rising fuel prices, and dozens of protesters and some security forces have been killed. No protest leaders have emerged. CSTO members are sending troops to quell clashes at Kazakhstan's request, and the U.S. has authorized non-emergency employees working for the consulate general in the country to leave. And various countries and international organizations have called for calm. Kazakhstan's president has ordered security forces to open fire without warning as anti-government protests continue. In a televised address, Kasim-Jomart Tokayev warned demonstrators against further action as Russian and allied troops try to put down days of protest. Nawi Jarbakale reports.
Burnt out cars, buildings destroyed, and civilians being killed by police. Until a few weeks ago, Kazakhstan was one of the most stable countries in Central Asia. But what started as small protests against gas prices have morphed into nationwide anti-government demonstrations that have left dozens dead and thousands injured. On Friday, the president risked escalating the violence, allowing soldiers to fire without warning in a bid to stop the unrest.
The counter-terrorist operation continues. The militants have not laid down their arms, they continue to commit crimes or are preparing for them. The fight against them must be pursued to the end. Whoever does not surrender will be destroyed.
Officials say more than 3,000 people have been arrested, mostly in Almaty, the country's largest city and the epicenter of the protests. This police handout footage shows some of those being detained, while one body lies motionless nearby. Those who can are trying to leave the country. This border post with neighboring Kyrgyzstan, one route to safety.
I'm coming from Almaty. I was supposed to fly to Dubai tomorrow, but I found that the Almaty airport is closed. I tried to go to other airports in Kazakhstan, but all airports in Kazakhstan are closed.
The Kazakh government has resigned because of the protests, but the president remains defiant. He says the rioters are foreign-backed terrorists. He's provided no evidence for the claim, but has called in his own international reinforcements, including troops from Russia, now on the ground in the former Soviet state. The European Union, UK and US have all raised concerns about Moscow's involvement, and the UN is calling for calm.
I think for us the important thing is that security forces, whether they are Kazakh or whether they are non-Kazakh troops, need to uphold the same human rights standards, which is to show restraint and protect people's rights to demonstrate peacefully.
Gunshots were heard in Almaty again on Friday, with the possibility of more casualties on both sides. Rising gas prices have fueled a fire here in Kazakhstan, with deep-rooted frustration surfacing after 3 decades of rule by former leader Nursultan Nazarbayev. Despite its vast reserves of oil, gas and other natural resources, some Kazakhs have a burning desire for change. Nawid Jabakil, CGTN.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a message to Kazakhstan's president. She offered support and says China opposes any external forces that create social unrest and harms Kazakhstan's stability.
China has noted that the Kazakh authorities are taking a series of vigorous measures to combat acts of violence and maintain social stability. China supports all efforts in favor of the Kazakh authorities to calm the situation as soon as possible, and resolutely opposes external forces creating social unrest and inciting violence in Kazakhstan. As a brotherly neighbor and a permanent comprehensive strategic partner, China is ready to do its best to provide the necessary support to Kazakhstan and help it overcome difficulties.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, of which Kazakhstan is a member, issued a statement on Friday saying it hopes the situation will stabilize soon. The organization says it believes timely measures have been taken by Kazakhstan's leaders to resume peaceful talks with the framework of the legal system. And meanwhile, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting the Maldives as both countries mark 50 years of diplomatic ties. Radhika Bajaj reports from the country's capital, Male.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit marks 50 years of bilateral ties between China and the Maldives. He was received with much warmth on Friday evening by his Maldivian counterpart, Abdullah Shahid. Now, during the course of this visit, there will be some cultural exchanges to mark 50 years of bilateral ties. There will be a courtesy call paid by Wang Yi to the Maldivian President Ibrahim Solih. We will also see extensive discussions between Abdullah Shahid and Wang Yi, whether it's to do with infrastructure development, health, and even travel. Now, for the Maldives, of course, China is a very important development partner, with China in the past decade having invested heavily into key infrastructure and socio-economic projects, whether it is housing complexes or a key bridge that links Mali to its neighboring islands, including the airport. Chinese tourists are also considered key for the tourism-dependent economy of the Maldives. And then, of course, for China, Maldives is a very key strategic partner in the Indian Ocean region. We are expecting that during this visit there will be some key documents that will be signed between the two sides, and these will have to do with health, travel, as well as infrastructure.
Myanmar's military leader has pledged support for Myanmar to follow a 5-point peace plan, and Min Aung Hlaing made the statement after his meeting with the Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen. He said Myanmar had extended its ceasefire with all ethnic armed organizations across the country. Cambodia currently holds the chair of ASEAN, and Hun Sen is the first head of state to visit Myanmar since the military takeover last February. Protests and rallies were held in some parts of Myanmar as people expressed anger over Hun Sen's visit. Well, let's turn our attention to COVID in India, and the country has reported nearly 142,000 new cases, the most since the end of May. Saturday is the second consecutive day with more than 100,000 new infections recorded. The outbreak is being fueled by the Omicron variant, which is overtaking Delta in many cities. The country's health ministry also reported 285 new deaths. India's total infections have surpassed 35 million. Well, Japan has declared quasi-emergency measures in 3 prefectures to curb a COVID-19 surge. Some officials have linked the rise in cases to U.S. military bases in the regions. Phoebe Amoroso reports from Tokyo.
This will allow the local governments to request businesses, for example, to shorten their hours, and also establishments to stop serving alcohol. But these have been criticised for really lacking teeth. There is some kind of fine for non-compliance, but in practice that was really not rolled out before. So that is what is the same. But this time round, really, Japan is dealing with an unprecedented speed when it comes to the spread. For example, cases in Okinawa have surpassed 1,400, and that's the highest ever on record. And here in Tokyo, cases have increased 12-fold compared to last week. And this is really due to the Omicron variant. A study looking at cases on the year end to early New Year found that around 46% of cases were Omicron, and it's expected to become the dominant variant shortly. Now, Japan is more prepared this time round after a very difficult time in the summer during the 5th wave. it has increased hospital capacity by about 30%, and the government has distributed Merck oral antiviral pills nationwide, looking to also distribute medications from Pfizer, and they are preparing several quarantine facilities. But where there is some concern is that booster shots have really yet to start being rolled out, only to healthcare workers. And they have shortened the period between double vaccination and this third jab from 8 to 7 months, but that really has yet to be rolled out to the elderly, and so there are concerns that this is a little too late to start moving.
Well, Ugandan authorities say the country is in the grip of a third wave of COVID-19 cases, as cases hit a daily average of 1,300. The Ministry of Health says this surge is down to people flouting restrictions during the festive season. Isabel Nta reports.
Uganda's Ministry of Health is warning there's been a spike of COVID-19 cases since Christmas week. Weekly positivity rates have surged from 11% in the third week of December to 23% now. The country is fully reopening its economy this month, but authorities warn another lockdown might be necessary if people do not take containment measures seriously.
The more we continue to downplay and act outside the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health, the more we will continue to be inflicted by COVID-19 and to suffer all the disruptions from returning to our normal lives.
Community transmission started going up after the country detected cases of the Omicron variant in early December. With new admissions rising every day, authorities in Uganda are worried about running out of hospital beds if infections don't slow down. The rising transmission rates comes just as schools prepare to reopen, causing fears about the safety of children in schools. The WHO says a safe reopening of the economy can only be achieved if more people get vaccinated against COVID-19.
Uganda is doing relatively good, but we haven't reached our target, the global target of ensuring at least 40% of the eligible population to be vaccinated by the end of last year.
So far, just 10 million people out of the targeted 22 million have received a first vaccine dose in Uganda, and a booster dose has been recommended for the elderly. Isabel Nta, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Well, that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot. So the tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Cameroon ready to host the 32-nation tournament from tomorrow. South Africa's ruling party, ANC, marks 110th anniversary amid divisions. And Ugandans in the grip of a third wave of COVID-19 as cases hit a daily average of 1,300. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. On our new series, Eating Around Africa, we head to Kenya's Lamu archipelago to explore the diversity of the Swahili culture. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Thank you for joining us for this hour. We begin in the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia has released prominent political prisoners, including opposition leaders from the Oromo ethnic group and members of the rebel TPLF group. Now, in a statement, government said the move is intended to ensure the success of the upcoming national dialogue. Here's CGTN's Guru Mchala with more.
This was the much anticipated move of the Ethiopian government, and as expected by many widely known opposition political leaders, are now freed from prison. Jawar Mohammed, Bakala Garba, the two prominent Oromo politicians, and Iskandar Nega, another leader of the Addis Ababa-based politician, are out of the maximum security prison on Friday night. Many others listed under their file are also out of prison. The freed opposition party leaders were jailed following the assassination of the famous Oromo singer Hachalu Hundessa in June 2020 and were facing justice after being accused of inciting violence. On the other hand, among the freed are former TPLF leaders, including its founder Sabat Nega. This move particularly was unexpected as the issue in the north with the rebels remains to be unresolved. These releases are said to be a new chapter in the history of the nation's politics. In a statement, the Ethiopian Government Communications Services Ministry said the government has pardoned all of these people to assure the coming national dialogue intended to resolve many seeking issues of the nation can be concluded with success. Many, including the US and the United Nations, have welcomed and appreciated the move of the Ethiopian government. Grumdara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Let's turn our attention to Nigeria now, where reports from Zamfara State say over 100 residents have been killed in the northwestern region. Witnesses say bandits arrived in large numbers and attacked up to 9 communities in the area. They're reporting that the attacks consisted of indiscriminate shooting and setting houses on fire. The incidents are said to have begun and began on Tuesday night and continued into Thursday night. No group has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Authorities say that a search for the attackers is ongoing. Well, Nigeria has officially designated criminal gangs blamed for mass kidnappings and displacements, especially in the country's northwest, as terrorist groups. The move is expected to give the government the power to take tougher action against gangs locally known as bandits under the country's terrorism prevention law. CGTN's Deji Badamosi has more on the story.
The designation follows the issuance of an official gazette which labeled activities of 2 bandit groups in particular and other similar groups in the country as terrorism and illegal. Security experts say the labeling of bandits as terrorists will now allow the military to deploy some of the equipment like the Tucano jet bombers the country acquired from the United States not long ago.
There are terms and conditions for the purchase, and that is tied into the Foreign Assistance Act of the United States or the Arms Export Act. You know, all these are tied into it, whereby you cannot buy something from America and use it on civilians. You have to use it on either terrorists or military. With this thing being gazetted now, I think we're open to dealing with them because those equipment that the military has just got are very, very precise and then can be very, very helpful in fighting these terrorists.
The Nigerian government has confirmed it has now obtained clearance to deploy the Tucano jets against bandits who have been ravaging particularly the northwest of Nigeria. Bandits have been blamed for several killings, sacking of hundreds of communities, mass kidnappings for ransom, including school children, among other crimes in Nigeria's north. The latest action of the government is one of several measures it has adopted to keep the situation in check.
We will need to have firm political will and political action, political will and political action at the highest level. Otherwise, these are just cosmetics that we are talking about. The banditry war, the kidnapping, anti-kidnapping, and the terrorism war is a huge business.
This is the last year for this very government, and I think the president, from the recent interview that he has, I think he's really ready to make sure that they do something about this before he leaves office. He has said it many times that he does not want to live in disgrace. So this is one of the reasons why he came into power. And I believe that this being the last year, he's going to use all the might available to him to see if we can have a headway in the northeast and northwest.
There have been concerns over the possibility of civilian casualty in the deployment of the Super Tucano bombers. Even the U.S. government has warned its Nigerian counterpart to ensure their use complies with international norms and is in line with the UN Charter. The Nigerian Air Force is giving the assurance that it will comply with all the rules of engagement in deploying the aircraft against bandits now designated as terrorists. DG Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos.
Well, the wait is finally over for Cameroon, which from Sunday hosts the Africa Cup of Nations 3 years later than initially planned. The host nation, rallying under national team Indomitable Lions, measures up to the likes of reigning champions Algeria, the Senegal of Sadio Mane, and Mohamed Salah's Egypt. Cameroon was supposed to be the host nation in 2019 before being stripped of the tournament due to the delays in its preparations, with Egypt replacing it. The 33rd Cup of Nations was then postponed last year because of the pandemic. The Central African country of 27 million people was therefore determined to press on with the competition amid reports last month that leading European clubs wanted it postponed again due to COVID-19 concerns. Well, this time it does go ahead starting Sunday when Cameroon take on Burkina Faso in Yaoundé. All right, we are now joined by CGTN's Deji Badamosi from Lagos, Nigeria, and Adel El Mahroui from Cairo, Egypt, for an analysis of the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations. Gentlemen, welcome to Africa Live. Deji, let me start with you, Deji. It's certainly been a long wait for Cameroon and Africa. Generally, what are the expectations for Nigeria?
Well, Richard, what I can tell you is that the expectation for Nigeria is that the team will go on to win the tournament. I mean, that's what every fan of the Super Eagles expects of the team. Despite the challenges and the troubles that the team has had to deal with lately, but then everyone here in Nigeria expects that the team will win the tournament. And if it does not, at least get to the finals. But then the overall expectation is that the team wins the tournament, and but you know, it's difficult to tell for now, because when you look at the challenges that the team has had to deal with in recent times, you know, the change of coach and all of that, and the fact that its last matches, at least the last two matches the team played now, it didn't play well. Well, you just can't be too certain that Nigeria will leave the trophy, but we just have to wait and see how things pan out. Richard?
All right, Deji, I take it that you mean that Nigerians around the globe will be medicated for depression if we don't make the finals or at least win it. All right, let's move on to Adel. Adel, thank you for standing by. Adel, the Egyptian camp has been hit by COVID-19 just when they were about to play. How is this going to affect the team, Adel?
It is shocking news for the Pharaohs, and how is it going to affect the team is still unclear, basically because the toll of the COVID-19 infections is yet to be calculated. Just the first round of testing have showed that there are 7 7 people within the national team tested positive. 5 of them are administrators, including the coach, the goalkeeper's coach, Assam Al-Hadari, and the second-in-line goalkeeper, Abu Gabal, which means that Egypt travels to Cameroon with Ishinewi, the prime goalkeeper, and his backup is going to be the usual third-in-line. So this is just the initial testing as well. So we are expecting that more people may be testing positive as the days to come, because most probably if you have 5 of the management tested positive, you have now 2 players also tested positive, the goalkeeper, and when the national team recalled 3 of its backup players, 1 of them also tested positive. So it is highly likely to see more infections turning up within the national teams within the coming days.
All right, let's bring Deji back into this conversation. Deji, speaking of setback and delays, Nigeria has had many problems in the run-up to the tournament. Has the team finally settled?
Well, to some extent, the team is finally settled, but then there are still issues. Some key players are not in the team yet. Odion Igalo, for instance, who is the Eagles' top striker, he's not in the team. We also have some key players who are not in the team. That defender who plays for Rangers, Leon Balogun, is not in the team. I mean, this guy has been the bulwark of the defense now for quite a number of years, so he's not in the team. So that is still a problem. The team is still expecting that the Saudi club now, where Odion Igalo plays for, would release him. They're expecting that he would join up with the team. If he doesn't, we understand the Super Eagles would not be able to get a replacement because CAF rule doesn't allow that. But so we have to wait and see. But other than that, the team is to some extent settled. They played a friendly match yesterday, and of course they won that match by 2-0. And the coach said, the interim coach now of the Eagles said he was impressed with the display, the way the boys played. So, well, as I said before, Richard, irrespective of the problems that the team has had to deal with in the past, and irrespective of the fact that the man who is handling the team now is doing so in an interim capacity, Nigerians still expect that this team would win the AFCON. And I'm very sure even you, Richard, would expect that Nigeria would win the AFCON. You know, there's that thing with us. We always demand so much from the Super Eagles, and we're always confident that the Super Eagles is still the best on the continent.
Well, Deji, I've got my fingers crossed throughout this bulletin. I can tell you that for sure. Adele, let's bring you right back into this conversation. Now, having hosted the event before, what are some of the concerns for Egypt as it goes into the tournament?
Well, Egypt's first concern definitely will be the Super Eagles, because together they clash in Group D in their opening game on January 11. Putting that aside, on a managerial level, Egypt has realized the magnitude of preparation and infrastructure required to organize a 24 teams AFCON. And Egypt has done so to prepare for that AFCON in 2019 when Cameroon didn't manage to be ready on time. It held the event within 6 months. But despite that, and despite the strong infrastructure that Egypt enjoys in terms of sports, it realized that 24 teams is a huge deal. That's 24 stadiums that have to be ready, at least 24 stadiums have to be ready for trainings. That's beside the stadiums allocated and dedicated for the main matches of the competition. Put on top of that the usual infrastructure and transportation and fan mobilization, the hotel and services facilities that must be there for the entire Africa as they go. But more importantly, and this is where many Egyptian football experts are concerned, is that Cameroon is holding the AFCON for the first time under the COVID-19 pandemic, which definitely adds a lot of pressure to the usual and expected mass of pressure that hosting the AFCON would do. Add the testing, add the isolation, the quarantine, and was what we've been hearing and seeing for the Egyptian national team with positive COVID infections. It is very likely and most probable actually to see many COVID-19 cases coming up, whether it's among fans or among national teams who will be competing on Africa's most prestigious football cup.
Indeed. Well, Deji, you get my final question. One more question, if you would indulge us. Deji, speaking of security and pressure, security has been a concern for Cameroon, sharing a border with Nigeria. What measures have been put in place to secure the country ahead of the event?
You're absolutely right, Richard. Security is a huge concern, and we have seen some security disturbances leading up to the opening ceremony of the AFCON. Where the security concern, of course, is in the southwest region of the country. Of course, that's where you have the Ambazonia separatist group now active. For instance, we saw an explosive device. We saw an explosion now in the town of Limbe. At Limbe, of course, you know, that's where you have the Group F. That's Group F now comprising Tunisia, Mauritania, Gambia. All of them, they will be playing their matches in Limbe. And Limbe, of course, is a huge worry as we speak. The Cameroonian government has deployed a huge security presence in Limbe. Virtually everywhere you go to in that city, you have a huge security presence. And then there's also a concern in an area known as Biu, where these teams now will be having their training. And not quite long ago, a group sent threatening messages to the teams who are training there that they are going to attack them. But of course, the Cameroonian government has given the assurance that it's up to the task, that it will provide the security needed to ensure that the players are safe and that the matches go on there peacefully. And of course, there's also a problem in the north. I mean, where of course Cameroon shares a border with Nigeria, and where Boko Haram is actually active, even though we've seen a drop in Boko Haram violence in that area. So no doubt at all, security is a big concern, but then the Cameroonian government has given every assurance that the competition will go on and that it's up to the task. But of course, it's certainly not going to be easy at all. But we just have to wait and see how it pans out. But by the way, let me just say this to Adele. Adele, I'm hoping that when we lock hands, Egypt will fall.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we've kickstarted a very important conversation, and you can bet CGTN will be following the games closely as it unfolds. And my producer says I cannot take any sides, so yes, I wish both countries all the very best. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Let's move along to Uganda now, where the country's authorities say the country is in the grip of a third wave of COVID-19 as cases hit a daily average of 1,300. The Ministry of Health says this surge is down to people flouting restrictions during the festive season. Isabel Nakiria reports.
Uganda's Minister of Health is warning there's been a spike of COVID-19 cases since Christmas week. Weekly positivity rates have surged from 11% in the third week of December to 23% now. The country is fully reopening its economy this month, but authorities warn another lockdown might be necessary if people do not take containment measures seriously.
The more we continue to downplay and act outside the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health, the more we will continue to be inflicted by COVID-19 and to suffer all the disruptions from returning to our normal lives.
Community transmission started going up after the country detected cases of the Omicron variant in early December. With new admissions rising every day, authorities in Uganda are worried about running out of hospital beds if infections don't slow down. The rising transmission rates comes just as schools prepare to reopen, causing fears about the safety of children in schools. The WHO says a safe reopening of the economy can only be achieved if more people get vaccinated against COVID-19.
Uganda is doing relatively good, but we haven't reached our target, the global target of ensuring at least 40% of the eligible population to be vaccinated by the end of last year.
So far, just 10 million people out of the targeted 22 million have received a first vaccine dose in Uganda, and a booster dose has been recommended for the elderly. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
You're watching Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Do not go away. On our new series, Eating Around Africa, we head to Kenya's Lamu archipelago to explore the diversity of the Swahili culture. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for sticking with us. South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, is celebrating its 110th anniversary this weekend. This comes as the party faces divisions between those who support incumbent President Cyril Ramaphosa and former President Jacob Zuma. Zuma has been facing legal battles since he left office in 2018. The ANC was founded in 1912 to oppose white minority rule and fight for rights among black South Africans. The party came to power in 1994 when the country's first democratic elections were held. All right, let's bring in political analyst Bernard Sabake, who is the director Student Governance and Development at the Nelson Mandela University. Well, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you with us. South Africa's ruling party, ANC, marks the 110th anniversary amid divisions, graft allegations, and broad challenges that saw it perform dismally in local government elections last year. What is ailing the party and how can it be fixed?
Well, greetings, Richard, and greetings to your viewers at home. Let me indicate that if you look at the various transitions within the ANC from 1997, when the question of identifying what is eating the ANC, mainly corruption and other ills that are engulfed within the party. These have been realized in 1997 per se at its Mafikeng conference. But the ruling party on its own, it has really done a bit less to try to really attack the challenge at hand. Each and every conference, the issue of renewal, it's being discussed, but there's no substance that comes out of it. It is only at the current period we find ourselves in now that the ruling party has really on their hands on their deck in order to really unmuscle the challenge of governance ills that are engulfed by the party. I think at this particular point in time, I think the only hope that the ANC had to really nip on is on the question of renewal that President Ramaphosa and with his collective, they are busy with at the current moment. Whether that it is too late for the ruling party ANC to save itself from really the decaying situation that it is in the public eye, it will ought to be seen as we move along.
All right, Bernard, to your point, despite the challenges, the ANC remains dominant. What's been the party's successes so far? And where do you see the party in the next few years in terms of influence?
You know, your question, the trickiness of your question is that, even when there are particular successes that the ruling party is doing, those successes are liquidated by the challenges that are in the public eye that have really collapsed public governance, and subsequently public trust is on a crossroad. It is difficult to quantify at the current moment. But I think the better success that one could really pinpoint is the issue of the ANC to finally accept that there is some elements that is eating itself and as a result, and do something about it. I think this is the the biggest achievement for its own healing. And one project, there are two key issues that really compete. The ANC in the recent period talk about the issue of a renewal, which renewal in this particular point, we've seen the step aside. It comes with a particular amount of criticism, and it worsened the division so far. But the underlying message of unity, it's continuously hitting the snag. But if the ruling party ANC persists on its own renewal, in the next couple of years, we will see a party that is either really emerge out of its own challenges. If the project renewal fail, we will see a decay of the ANC in a number of years to come.
All right, Dr. Bernard Sabaki, let's leave it there for now. Thank you for shedding light on all of that there with your analysis. Moving along now, food is central to many African communities. From celebrations to everyday moments, a dish can tell you a lot about a culture. And that is why, with our new series, Eating Around Africa, we are using food to explore the diversity of the continent. And beyond discovering new dishes, we want to highlight the talented chefs that call Africa home. For today, Astatal starts off in Kenya's Lamu archipelago. Let's join her as she learns more about the Swahili culture and finds a chef who is putting his own twist on local cuisine.
Hey there, my name is Astatal, and there are 3 things you should know about me. I love food, I'm obsessed with history, and I travel whenever I can. And what I love about food is that each dish has a story, and with every bite you get to know a little bit more about history. And that's why I'm here in Lamu, to learn more about Swahili cuisine. But before I dive right in, I need to learn a bit more about this unique culture. Lamu is an archipelago in the Indian Ocean, so if you want to get around, boats are your best bet. I made my way to Lamu town, the biggest one on the archipelago. Walking through Old Town, the island's history seemed etched everywhere. Like its name suggests, Old Town has a long history. Actually, it's the oldest Swahili settlement in East Africa, and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The more I wandered, the more curious I became, so I made my way to the center of town to find Lamu Fort. Like much of Lamu Island, the fort has undergone so many transformations. For centuries, it protected the island from enemies. Then it became a prison until 1984. Now it's not only a museum, but a community gathering point. I'm here to meet Mohamed Mwenje. He's not your traditional curator. He doesn't just study the island's history and preserve its treasured buildings, he engages with the community, finding it just as important to preserve Lamu's distinct culture. Can you tell me a bit more about the history of Lamu and all the cultures that have visited the island?
So from the early onset, Lamu starts to contact or connect or relate to its other neighbors within the coast, the other Swahili settlements. And through that, you can see the transfer of knowledge. And at a later period, the East African coast starts to trade. The need to trade between different peoples across the globe is actually what brought the contact. Possibly the earliest people to reach this part of East Africa were maybe the people from the Arabian Peninsula. And they had a very profound impact.
When it came to the food, how exactly did those cultures influence the food?
Yeah, the people say this, that Swahili culture has a very high affinity for flair. And so I think it was able actually to sort of adapt what the visitors came with and make it its own. So you will find that most of the spices and foodstuffs that were copied from outside, they are no longer being viewed as foreign. They've been accepted as being Swahili. We can name quite a number of range of foods which are actually borrowed from the Indian subcontinent, but have been wholly, fully adapted by the Swahili people, and they've made it their own. Swahili cuisine also resonates in different facets of its culture. So whenever they have a grand ceremony, for example, you need to prepare something very nice for the visitors, and biryani just fits the bill. And it has been adapted, and whenever it is mentioned, people immediately reflect upon an occasion, be it celebration of just a simple Friday, because Friday is an important day in the Muslim week. So just having lunch on Friday is an important occasion.
Curious to learn more about biryani, I head out of Lamu Fort. For 10 years, Island Dishes has been tucked away in the alleys of Lamu town. Mwalimu Athman, who everyone calls teacher, prides himself on having mastered the art of making a great biryani. Before serving his biryani to customers, teacher wakes up early to grab fresh ingredients. To make biryani, you'll need ingredients like tomatoes, potatoes, and onions. When it comes to biryani, you can use many different types of meat. Every Friday, teacher gives his loyal customers a choice of beef or chicken biryani. And if you want to make a true Swahili biryani, you'll need thinly sliced onions, which are fried and saved for later to add to the stew. Yellow food coloring powder is added to potatoes, which are also fried. Biryani has two main components, the stew and rice. The rice also has a yellow tinge to it, but that comes from the saffron. At Island Dishes, teacher cooks his chicken before adding it to the stew. In the stew, ginger, garlic, tomatoes, tamarind, and yogurt are all mixed together. And of course, you can't forget the spices. Turmeric, curry powder, and black pepper are all mixed together to give the dish its beautiful flavor. Once the cooking is done, all that's left to do is for customers to dig in to a steaming plate of biryani. One thing I love about being African is that we take everything that we've learned from our culture and our history to make something new. Now I'm going to meet a chef who's doing just that. He's taking everything that he's learned from Swahili cuisine to create his own signature dishes.
Yes.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, Nasta.
How are you?
I'm fine. How
I
are you?
heard you're the man to see about spices.
Yes.
Okay, I need to learn more about this.
You
Come
are-
on.
You are at the correct place.
Let's go.
I am Anton Mayambwana and I am 48. I like Swahili flavors because, first, they are different from Western food. Their flavors are quite different and you can play with the flavors. But what inspired me, I wanted to make my own Swahili sauce so that to be part of the Swahili people who are making Swahili food. I used to make Swahili food since when I was a young boy. It's my grandmother who inspired me to cooking. After there, my elder sister stepped in because we had only one sister. In fact, my sister was the first person to teach me how to make a chapati. And that was very great because I am still today, I'm using that knowledge. There's a secret he gave me, and I use that secret till now. Completing my 4 years course, that is secondary education, I was taken by my cousin from Kilifi to Malindi. There was another guy who had been doing renovation. Though my job was not to cook, but after helping those people who are doing renovation, I used to run to the kitchen. So I was telling the chefs, because I had that idea of cooking. Okay, I'm here, use me. So this one gives you a job to do, chopping onion, chopping some basil maybe. After like 2 months on doing that, the director of that particular hotel, restaurant, was inspired by what I was doing. So he told me if I would like to give me a job. And I said yes. And the first job they gave me was cleaning the garden. But after cleaning the garden, if I finish my job, I run to the kitchen. In 1996, I became a chef at Peponi. Our head chef was not feeling well for about 6 months, so the time I was chosen to lead the group as a chef, I stepped and I did it. So everyone got inspired by me, how I drove them at the kitchen, how I solved the problems. So by that time, I knew now I'll become a chef. You know, a cook and a chef, they're two different people. A chef can invent a meal, but a cook is there being given a certain food to cook. The time I was chef at a very big restaurant, well known worldwide. When I came out of there and working for the homes, at the hotel, there's menu to be followed. There's some regulations to be followed. But with the homes, you know, you are the one to do everything. So there's freedom cooking for the homes. The butcher seafood sauce is so special to me because it's my invention and I like it. And I always like to expose that one so that people will know that I am really a chef who can make things happen.
Hey, Tony.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm fine.
You're working hard in this kitchen, aren't you?
Of course, yes. I want to please my clients.
I'm sure we will be more than happy. Are these the same chapatis that you said your sister taught you how to make?
Yes.
Have you changed anything with them? This is the original.
This is the original, which my sister taught me.
Do you take a lot of family secrets back to the kitchen?
To the loved one. Yeah, not all.
Does it make you feel like they're here in the kitchen with you?
Of course, yes.
You look like you're really, really busy. I'm gonna go get out of your hair and sit at the table and try to wait patiently for this.
You will wait patiently for me at the table and see. It will come as a surprise.
You're the boss here. You're the boss here.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey guys.
Hey Tony, how are you?
I'm fine.
Do we finally get to taste this too?
Of course, yes.
All right, tell us what we have there.
Here we have chapati, we have butcher seafood sauce, we have coconut beans and coconut rice. I think with the combination of this, we have good time, we'll enjoy it.
I'm so excited for this, our little fine dining special treat. How was it?
That's amazing.
I love the fish.
Well, smelling it cooking was quite hard. So not tucking in the kitchen. Tony.
Cheers indeed to Tony and an amazing adventure in Lamu. While I'm sad to say goodbye, I can't wait to eat my way around Africa.
Well, I guess that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms for the team. I'm Richard Nta saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll be right back here same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.